Well, welcome everyone. This is Bonnie Gressel, your host here at the Gift of Choice Show. Today, it's the Bonnie and Betty Show. Hey, Betty.
Hi, Bonnie, and hello, everybody. I also want to welcome you to our show today, where we're going to be breaking down what it means to be empowered in your sensuality and how that leads to great sex. How about that for a teaser?
Yeah, and that's always a hot topic, so no pun intended. It's going to be a great discussion, no doubt. You know, I want to tell you all how much we both, Betty and I, both appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy day to spend a little bit of that time here with us on the show. You know, our goal is to provide great content so that you feel that this time was well spent. Now, Betty and I have evolved our wheel of empowerment and actually added a few more wedges to it to, really get to all those pieces of empowerment. We were talking about our next wedge, which would have been sexuality, and we thought, sensuality almost has to come first as a precursor. So that's what we're going to talk about today before we get into the sexuality talk next month.
Yeah, and let me just jump in here and say, Bonnie and I are continuing to dissect empowerment into these smaller chunks to help you see where you are feeling empowered and how you can build on that, and maybe where there's areas that you haven't even thought about being empowered, and sensuality may be one of those areas. So I'm super excited about talking about your awareness of sensuality, because when you increase your awareness of sensuality, that's when you can really choose pleasure quickly and easily. So we're going to be sharing lots of good thoughts and ideas of how you can really cultivate sensuality in your life.
Yeah, and that's so true, Betty. I think, too, that it's so much about the awareness of it, the noticing, the just, being with it, because so often we get so busy in our lives and we just don't pay attention to that stuff. And so we're going to bring you back to a little bit of that on today's show. Now, as just a reminder, I want to, remind all of you that you can listen to all the past episodes here on Blog Talk Radio and actually on iTunes as well for the Gift of Choice. There's lots of them out there. And then we stream the last episode on Speak Up Talk Radio 24/7. So they're always on for you. You can listen in the middle of the night if you want to. So to be a part of this community and to sort of stay in the know and keep in that loop of when the shows are posted and archived, which is every week, just click follow if you're on the Blog Talk Radio page, on the show page here. If you're listening on iTunes, click the subscribe button. And either way, you'll sort of be in the know. You'll know when the next show is coming up. And on iTunes, it'll just add it to your list of shows that you follow. And then, of course, there's our Facebook group called Gift of Choice Radio Show. And that's free for anyone to join. I welcome everyone. And, I always want to remind everyone, too, that the Gift of Choice Show is educational, inspirational, and I hope most of the time motivational in nature. But I do want you to take what fits for you and simply let go of the rest. The Gift of Choice Show does not intend or imply to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment either. And I always want to just remind everyone with that little reminder before we begin each show, because I want you to take what fits for you, and I want this to be a valuable hour for you. Now, the call-in number, in case anybody wants to call in, is 714-816-4716. And to join the conversation, you just press 1 on your phone, and lets me know that you've raised your hand and you'd like to be live on the air with us, with Betty and I. So I can unmute you from where I am in the studio, and we can all talk live on the air together. So just press 1 on your phone. And if you just want to listen in, call in the number, but don't press 1, and then I won't unmute you, and you can just listen from there. And I always have the chat room open as well. So if that's more comfortable for you or easier for you to access, please join us in the chat room as well. Now, before we begin sort of the content of each show, every month, or every week actually, we always start with that little breathing meditation. And the show that Betty and I do together, I always like her to guide us in that meditation because I do it the rest of the time. And I think Betty does a great job at this. So would you help us out, Betty, by guiding us through that little breathing meditation today?
You bet. I would love to. So today I'm going to invite you, if it's possible, to take these few moments for our breathing meditation and go sit outside or stand outside as we explore sensuality on today's show. There's so much sensuality in nature. I'm a real nature girl that I just invite you to do that if it's possible for you. It can often enhance your breathing, your meditation, and your ability to access sensuality. But no matter where you are, as long as you're not driving or operating heavy equipment, I invite you to close your eyes and take a nice deep breath with the inhale going deep down into your lower belly, and on the exhale, imagine your energy moving down towards the ground, grounding you and making you feel so solid on your 2 feet that are planted on this earth. So one more time, take a nice deep breath, inhaling way down into the lower belly. And on the exhale, feel your energy move down. Become aware of your spine and feel the energy move down your spine, down, down, down till it gets to the base. And at the base of the spine, there's a cord that extends from your spine all the way to the earth. It pierces through the earth, travels through all the different layers, and wraps around the core. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your seat in the chair if you're sitting. Take a nice deep breath. Exhaling, feeling how supported we always are by this very solid earth that lives underneath each and every one of us. And before we really get into our conversation today around sensuality, I invite you to right now just see if there are any sounds, and maybe there are no sounds. Become very aware of the quiet of whatever is in earshot of you. Just pay full attention to it. Also, for a moment, just consider your sense of smell, the sensuality of smell. Think of how beautiful a gardenia smells, as long as you're not allergic to them, or some other flower that you love the smell of it. Just imagine that for a moment. If you're lucky enough to be outside smelling flowers, take it all in fully. And take another nice deep breath. And know that because you've invested this time in learning a little more about your sensuality, you are going to be aware and get to experience more sensuality in your life just because you showed up here in this moment on this day, whether you're listening live or to the recording. So good for you. Congratulate yourself. And then take another deep breath and bring yourself back to the room, back to this show. And open your eyes. And I hope that you all feel even more ready for this conversation about empowerment and sensuality. Are you ready, Bonnie?
Oh, I'm ready, Betty. Are you? I know you are. This is your wheelhouse, girl.
Yeah, I totally believe in sensuality, and you'll hear a little bit more why I have such a strong belief in it in just a few minutes. But we want to set the context for those of you who may not have listened to our past shows in 2015. But at the very beginning of this year, in January, we developed our own empowerment wheel, Bonnie and I did. And what we did is break down these wedges. If you go onto the Facebook page, Gift of Choice Radio Show, you'll see the empowerment wheel that we created right on the very top post. And we broke down empowerment. One of the things I hear Bonnie say all the time in terms of moving forward and making changes in your life is breaking it down into chunks, breaking it down into small steps. And then it's always so much more doable. You know, we don't get so overwhelmed. Empowerment is one of those words that can be overwhelming. So what we decided to do was really look at all the different places. And have we covered all of them? Probably not. We could probably come up with another empowerment wheel. But we've taken 10 different areas. And sensuality is the wedge of that wheel that we're going to talk about today. But we've talked about the empowerment of money in February, relationships in March, beauty in April, sensuality here in this month. Next month, we're going to talk about sexuality. So you can really begin to feel into what are your areas where you feel really good, you feel empowered, you feel confident. Maybe you feel confident about money, but maybe you're not so confident about your beauty. You know, once you dissect that and can identify what you might need to work on a little bit more or what you want to just build on, what you already have, then empowerment can grow. At least that's the way I feel into it and see it. So we've gotten some great feedback already on this idea about breaking empowerment down into different ways to define it. So I hope it's working for you. If not, please give us some feedback and let us know what's working, what you like, what you'd like us to talk about, what else you'd like us to see. You can do all of that on Gift of Choice Radio Show Facebook page. We would love to hear from you. So that's a little bit about what we've covered so far and where we're going today. Bonnie, do you want to jump in here? Did you think about any experience that you have had with sensuality in your life that has been impactful in any way?
Sure, but first I want to just remind people that if you did miss a show, beforehand, and you want to go back and listen, that you certainly can do that. You can do that on the archives at Blog Talk Radio and also on iTunes. And in the last couple of the radio shows that we did, or that I did the last couple of weeks, I sort of recapped money and relationships and beauty again, so that you get sort of another little burst of it, if you will. So just wanted to remind folks that that stuff is out there. It'll probably be out there for years to come, so you can go back and listen to it at any time. And Betty, as I was thinking about sensuality for me, there's so many things. Oh my goodness. I never really realized how many times I go, it's about, various things. I mean, there's so many, and, we'll get a little bit more into the senses. You started that conversation with your meditation, but there's so many ways. I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to food, and I probably have a very high affinity to food because I think about it a lot. But to me, it's, like the taste of a really good dark chocolate. Or just a sip, not a bunch, but just a sip of a really good wine, which doesn't necessarily have to be an expensive wine, because my favorite wine is Kendall Jackson Chardonnay, and that's not that expensive. So, but to me, that's like, it makes me go, when I have it, it's that sensuality feeling, or a good meal. So many people can, I think, relate to food. So I did want to mention that because I certainly find that with lots of things that I ingest. And then there's the whole kinesthetic thing, the feel stuff. My husband, I'm very fortunate in that my husband will give me foot rubs. Oh, my God, there is nothing so great as a good foot rub, and it just makes me go, It just does. So that's another form of sensuality for me. And, Betty was talking about nature. I mean, nature is, we're fortunate in that we can see sunsets in our backyard. We kind of don't have much behind our house, and we've got gorgeous sunsets. And very often I'll just stop everything I'm doing. If I'm cooking dinner or whatever, I'll just stop, and I won't be able to do anything but just stare at the beauty of that sunset. And then I was mentioning to Betty before we got on the air today that it's raining here today. And we need the rain really bad here in Wisconsin, but it's kind of one of those cold, rainy, icky days. It's like in the 40s or something, and it's raining. But you know what? When it's not quite so cold and we get that rain in the spring or the summer, it's that smell of fresh rain. Oh, my goodness. That's another sensual thing for me. I mean, you're right, Betty. There are so many things. I stopped making the list because we would be here for 5 hours. So I thought I would just do a few, and then we would get into our content.
Yeah, well, just your talk about the rain, it reminds me of this wonderful song by Natasha Bedingfield called Unwritten. The entire song, the lyrics are fabulous. I love the song, but part of the lyrics, the chorus, is feel the rain on your skin. No one else can feel it for you. And that's such a sensual thing to think about. I mean, you are the only one. I used to love to hike in the rain. I still do. I just don't live in a place where I'm around that much rain anymore. But hiking in the rain, being out in nature in the rain, as long as it's not a thunderstorm, but it is such a sensual experience. So one of the stories that I wanted to share was actually with a client. Now, this was a very profound experience around sensuality, but it really speaks to the power of tuning into our senses. This was a man, he had chronic fatigue syndrome, and he was bedridden because he was so fatigued for over a year. He barely got out of bed, and so, you can imagine all the things that happen when that is the case. Your muscles start to atrophy. I mean, he was not in good shape. And he was at a very, very low point in his life. And we started working together, and we started talking about the power of sensuality and how even from his bed, he could begin to experience sensuality. He hadn't been sexual in a long, long time. So in terms of healing around sexuality, that felt completely out of range for him. And of course, we get to choose what's in range for us and what's not. But when we talked about sensuality, as he was laying in his bed, he began to notice and pay attention to the breeze that was coming in his window. And he began to feel that on his skin. And then he started to feel the way the sheets felt as his body was laying in the sheets. And as people were bringing him food, he started to taste and smell the food. And he had a lot of really great people around him who saw what was going on and began to create more experiences around his sensuality by bringing flowers or bringing beautiful photographs and other things for him to experience. And what he did was he started to feel pleasure. He started to feel joy. He started to feel alive again. And he's the one who has said it, that was his turning point to what he thinks is curing chronic fatigue syndrome, because now he's very active, he's working, he's able to function in the world and in the way that he always wanted to function. And so just a little taste of, with a lot of this pleasure work, a lot of people think it's just fluff. It's not. This is powerful tools that we carry around with us, inside of us, all the time. So that's a story that I just really wanted to share with the listeners today, Bonnie.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I've seen that happen a number of times with patients that I've had in the past. So I totally relate to what this gentleman was going through in terms of sort of coming out of that icky, horrible place out into pleasure, out into life again. That's awesome.
Right. He felt so dead when he couldn't function. And then it was something so simple. I really want to underline the simplicity of it. So simple as beginning to feel, because he's still alive. He's still breathing. He's still here. And no matter what your situation is, your sensuality is available to you. It's a beautiful thing.
And again, it's our choice to see it and feel it and notice it or not.
Right, because that whole year that he was laying in bed, it was there. Nothing really changed. The breeze didn't just all of a sudden start blowing through. So, yeah, good stuff. So, in taking off just from that thought, before we get in deep with our conversation and really give you some ways to practice this sensuality, I always want to offer the opportunity to really do some coaching work with me in groups, making it really cost effective. You know, Bonnie and I give you what we can in this hour, and there's so much more. You know, I've been studying this for years, as has Bonnie in her entire career as well. And there are so many resources that we have on these empowerment topics that we don't have time to cover in this hour. So if you can gather at least 6 people together and no more than 10, I am really excited to offer the opportunity for a teleseminar, which is over the phone. So it's also very simple to do a deeper dive into these topics. It would include some coaching on air, meaning on the teleseminar with individuals. And so, you know, if you just said, boy, that sounds great, I'm interested in that, I want you to email me right now, Coach Betty at CoachBettyLive.com. What's going on for you, Bonnie? You got any announcements today?
Well, the only thing I wanted to mention is just a reminder for those people who might be interested that my other radio show, The Holistic Entrepreneur, is always on Tuesday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's on the BBM Global Network and also on TuneIn Radio. Now, it's always live, and then they play replays and things, but it's not. It takes about, a week or so to be archived. So if you are, have so inclined to listen to the radio at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, The Holistic Entrepreneur will be on, and I have a great guest on the show again. She's actually from Belgium, but she happens to be in the U.S. She's out in New York right now, so the time zone worked out for her okay, so I'm excited to have her on the show. So that's 9 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. And on that show, I always offer a 15-minute free strategy session with me to gain clarity about your path. And I would offer that to anyone who's listening to this show as well. So I guess that would be my offer. And then if you want to listen to the other show, I'll see you again at 9 o'clock tomorrow night.
So if somebody wants to take you up on your 15 minutes, what should they do?
Oh, thanks for asking. Of course I know, so I knew things to say it. They just go to my website. Just go to BonnieGressel.com, and it's right at the top. It just says, yes, I want a free strategy session to gain clarity, and you just click on that and give me your information, and then we set something up.
Perfect. Well, we're going to take a quick break before we dive into the hows and whys of feeling empowered around sensuality. So this is the Bonnie and Betty Show on Blog Talk Radio, and we will be right back.
Hello, everybody. This is Coach Betty Louise, and I have a question for you. When is the last time you looked in the mirror and saw your amazing beauty and sexuality? 80% of women do not have a positive body image. 97% of women do not like something about their bodies, and over 10 million women have eating disorders. In addition, at least 40% of women are sexually repressed, and 1 in 7 marriages are sexless. I've just completed a book called Healing with Pleasure Medicine. What I will teach you is what gets in the way of your ability to see your beauty, sensuality, and sexuality, how to shift your perception to increase pleasure throughout your entire day. Okay, the place to find all of this information is CoachBettyLive.com. One more time, CoachBettyLive.com. Look forward to connecting.
You're listening to The Gift of Choice with your co-hosts Bonnie Gressel and Betty Louise. The Gift of Choice is sponsored by M&B Global Solutions, providing individualized coaching for entrepreneurs and authors, as well as book editing and publishing services. For more information, go to mnbglobalsolutions.com.
Well, we're back, everyone. This is Bonnie Gressel, and I'm here with Coach Betty Louise here at The Gift of Choice. I'm so glad that you've come back to join us for another segment of the show as we're talking about sensuality. And, you know, some people might say, okay, exactly what is sensuality? What's the definition of this? Well, to me, and we'll find out in a sec what Betty thinks about this, to me, it's an attitude. You know, anything, as we were talking about before, anything can be a sensual experience, but it's how you perceive it, what you make of it, say it's for yourself, how you hold yourself, what you think of yourself. You know, do you love yourself? We're back to that self-love again, which is kind of, I think, at the core of so many things. You know, it's more than just being comfortable in your own skin. It's loving to be in your own skin. That feminine, fresh, alive, feeling good, radiant. I mean, my goodness, I could think of all sorts of adjectives to describe that. But it's the stuff that brings a smile to your face, or maybe even a giggle. Embracing yourself with color, movement, aliveness. I mean, I can go on and on. But to me, it's all about how you perceive it. It's an attitude and a choice. So, Betty, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like an attitude of sensuality. Just try that on for size and see how that feels. The way I see sensuality, I try to make it really simple. It's our five senses. It's being aware that we are sensual beings just by being a human being. And our five senses of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And where do these senses come from? They come from inside of us. So I think about it in terms of an inner sensuality. You know, a lot of these words like sensuality and sexuality, pleasure, people so quickly go to being with another person, having a sexual experience. All three of these words can invoke that for people. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a beautiful thing, and it's so much more than that. Sensuality is something that you don't need to have a single person anywhere close to you, and you can have an incredibly sensual experience, as we talked about earlier with this client of mine that literally feels like he cured his condition with sensuality. And I like to say we carry it around with us 24/7. So it truly is a matter of paying attention. And as Bonnie underlined earlier, being aware. When we become aware of our senses, and let me give you an example of this. I was recently speaking at an expo here in Phoenix, the Sexual Health Expo. It was a phenomenal experience. Had a lot of really good conversations with people around how they can be really healthy in their ability to express sexuality. So great stuff. And one of the things I did at the little table I had set up was I had some chocolate-covered caramels. And as people would approach the table, I had a sign that said, "Ask me how to increase your pleasure in 30 seconds." And I got some curiosity, and so as people would ask me about that, I would ask them to close their eyes and put the chocolate-covered caramel in their mouth. And for 30 seconds, and I kept time because I didn't want them thinking about anything else, I had them taste those chocolate-covered caramels fully, be fully present in the experience of chocolate-covered caramels.
To hear the results of that experiment, listen to part 2.